You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObscast.com.
Hello and welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast, episode 31. I'm Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for the site. I'm joined by Cameron Crane for this special episode. Cameron, I hope you are bundled up. We are going somewhere really cold today.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's relatively cold here where I am. It's not as cold as it is, um, in Upper Alaska.
All right.
And we're going to talk about True Detective, Night Country, episode one. Since you started with this, I would have mentioned now, no one's dressed warmly enough. I'll
They're like
probably
sleeping in shorts and t-shirts and stuff. Like, what are you doing?
maybe I'll mention it again. It's one thing when they're inside, okay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You've got heat in your house or whatever. I'm saying when they're outside, they're not dressed warmly enough when they're outside. And I feel like, well, I guess maybe we have to forgive this because, you know, you want to be able to see people's faces and stuff like that. It's a TV show. But, I might tie that in later. I have some thoughts about it. Anyway, so again, not to get too far out of myself, we're meeting today to talk about the first episode of the new season of True Detective. We're both excited about this. We're both fans of True Detective overall. Um, and we're going to get into this over the next 6 weeks, I believe, right? 6 episodes.
6 episodes,
Yeah,
yep.
that's right. And so we're meeting here today prior to when the episode is aired. We're going to put this out right after the episode is aired. And so just to let everyone know, we are recording this early. I do want to hit on the one news item. So we're going to forego our usual kind of news and notes on this one today. You can listen to Tuesday's podcast where we talked about Fargo for kind of news of the week. One thing we talked about there was casting announcements for The White Lotus season 3, and like shortly after we recorded that podcast, before we published the podcast, it was officially announced that Carrie Coon is going to be in it also, and I wanted to mention that because I love Carrie Coon immensely.
Yeah, HBO veteran Carrie Coon. I mean, Leftovers, Gilded Age. She is back in her wheelhouse here with White Lotus. I mean, man, I just this is a great addition. We talked about Parker Posey. We talked about Michelle Monaghan. We talked about sort of this top line strong female cast. This is fantastic. I mean, I
I'm
can't,
all,
can't wait for
dude,
this.
I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before. Nora Durst is in my list of favorite TV characters ever.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So like I'm totally on board for this, and really can't wait now for the new season.
Yeah, so but start filming soon. We mentioned in Thailand. There's rumors, there's sort of a theme each season. There's rumors that this season is going to be about religion. So I mean, imagine these women were philosophizing there in Thailand about who knows what. But Carrie Coon says in this article you found that she gasped while reading the script. So whether that's a PR comment or, or the truth, I guess we'll see.
I trust Carrie Coon.
Yeah.
um, uh, do you want to mention the other thing? We
Yeah,
kind of
there did reference, we touched on this in our last pod as well, that there is usually one or two holdovers from previous White Lotus casts, although this has become sort of an anthology revolving around different White Lotus resorts around the world. So um Belinda is the role, Natasha Rothwell. She was the spa worker, the masseuse that Jennifer Coolidge's character befriended in the last season. We'll be back for the next season. So she will be sort of the transition character. Presumably she's moved on to a different location and we'll see her character again, perhaps working at the spa in the Thailand White Lotus.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. She was in season one, wasn't she?
That's right. She was
Yeah,
Hawaii season one. Yes.
yeah. So I'm kind of curious about how did she get to Thailand and all of that.
Yeah.
That season one arc. She was kind of let down at the end, as I recall.
Yes,
So
that's right.
that's an interesting tie-in. So yeah, looking forward to White Lotus season 3. We don't have a date on that yet. But I'm sure whenever it comes out, we'll have articles up on the site. Maybe we'll even talk about it on the podcast. Um, but we're here today to talk about True Detective.
Yes.
Let's get to it.
Let's
All right.
get to it.
Spoiler warning. If you haven't watched the first episode of the new season of True Detective as of yet, we are going to dig into the details of what happens in season 4, episode 1, titled Part 1, which probably we will just cut that redundancy in the future and just
Yeah.
embrace calling them parts. Um, True Detective season 4, aka True Detective Night Country. Oh, lots of fun stuff going on with the titling. Blanket spoiler warning for this first episode. And yeah, let's get to it.
Okay. All right. So, True Detective Night Country, season 4, part 1. This opens with a kind of mysterious scene, which we'll talk about later, of a hunter looking out over a group of mooses, and they're scared by something and running away. And then we immediately cut to what is a long night that's fallen over the fictional Ennis, Alaska, where the sun is set and not to be seen again for several weeks. 8 men have mysteriously disappeared from a remote research station. After that begins, after a delivery driver discovers that they are missing, they call in the local chief, Liz Danvers, played by Jodie Foster, and she leads the investigation, the disappearances of these men, while at the same time having to deal with a whole host of other issues, such as some type of family drama or with someone that she is taking care of. A lot of local misfits and local trouble. The town seems to have quite a dark past, quite a lot of dark, shady characters within the town. And then there's apparently a former partner or someone that she worked on a case with, who's now state trooper Evangeline Navarro, who takes an interest in the missing persons case because it could lead to some clues of a 6-year-old cold case of a murdered Native woman that's weighed on her these past 6 years. Seems that Danvers and Navarro had some sort of falling out. Danvers requested that she leave the police department to go work for the state troopers after not seeing eye to eye. So now they're forced back together in this to solve this case of the 8 men that have been disappeared. Meanwhile, local resident Rose, and I guess is what is the spirit of her dead husband, helps her identify and locate at least some of the bodies of the research. They're frozen and buried in the tundra. The scene or the episode ends with these bodies being discovered, and I guess we're off and running. Sort of what's the mystery here? What's the cause of this? Very much a dark, almost mystical, supernatural air to this, and we've got 5 episodes left to sort of solve this mystery. So that's where I leave it. Where should we start?
Yeah, so maybe we should start with kind of parsing some of these relationships.
Yeah.
As you mentioned. One quick note, I mean, on the tone, I've seen some people referring to Silence of the Lambs, I guess because of Jodie Foster of it all, and we'll talk about Jodie Foster and so on. I got my vibes were much more The Thing.
Yes.
Have you seen The Thing? I mean,
Yeah, and actually, Issa Lopez should have mentioned. Issa Lopez wrote and directed this episode, and I think will also for all of them this season. I think she did an interview perhaps with the AV Club, and she directly referenced The Thing as one of the influences for this season.
Yeah, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world because
Right.
researchers on an Arctic station and weird.
Yeah.
I was like, this is like The Thing.
Exactly.
So we'll see. How directly or whatever. That's one big thing to talk about. But yeah, let's talk about the relationships first because I enjoyed the episode a lot. It was kind of weird because generally speaking, I like how or I like it when TV shows have people communicating in a natural way rather than giving you an exposition dump.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I almost felt like it went a little too far with this one. Like I almost feel like they were trying to not give us information about like all sorts of things. I don't know if you felt that way at all.
Yeah, it did seem that they were being intentional about talking about conflict and where conflict has taken them, and so we can sort of deduce what the things were that led to that conflict or the backstory behind all of it without spelling out anything. I mean, there were some moments of flashbacks, some moments of exposition where we're discussing things that have happened in the past or that's when you made me go off and work for the state troopers. But, most of it were sort of left to our own devices of how this all happened.
Yeah. So it felt to me like it went a little far. That's just all. Because like even when Navarro comes into Danvers' office and they have this conversation, he
Yep.
was like, is it her? It's like you could use the name of the person from 6 years ago in this circumstance. You know what I mean? Like, of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
yeah, she knows what you're talking about and all of that. But so I don't know. It seemed you mentioned the family drama. Does this need to be presented as much of a mystery as it kind of is? My take on it was that the young girl Leah is Liz Danvers' daughter,
Yeah,
but
that
maybe
confused
not
me a
biological
bit.
daughter.
Yeah, maybe not biological, because at one point she references my father and not in reference to either a former partner or spouse of Chief Danvers or some relationship that they may currently share. This is someone that sort of is a daughter figure, or if not biologically the daughter of Chief Danvers, and that there's been some sort of relationship or something that's happened that's caused her to sort of take over the responsibility for Leah, and she's not approving of what Leah's doing, not necessarily the lifestyle, but what she's doing, what she was doing with her
Yeah.
teenage friend, recording
Well,
themselves.
she shouldn't
Well,
approve of that. I mean, come on.
yeah.
I don't want to be like a stick in the mud or anything. Apparently, you got a couple teenagers making sexy tapes, and like
Yeah.
Liz Danvers is, she's absolutely right. Like
Yeah.
you can't do this. People break
Yeah.
up, and you end up with revenge porn on the internet and all of this. And I guess it's a
Exactly.
problem that modern young people face. But yeah, this is what I pieced together, and I don't know if it'll get filled in, but that Liz, that her husband died.
Yeah.
What
Something's
I'm piecing
happening.
together is that she got together with this guy who had this daughter,
Hmm.
and then he died. And then I also got the feeling that he was killed by a drunk driver.
Oh, yeah, that's a good reference as they encounter that drunk driver when they're riding together. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but again, Leah says something like, it's weird how we never talk about that day when the thing happened. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it felt a little like, again, it felt almost trying too hard to avoid
Yeah.
exposition. That was my inference there. I don't know for sure if that's right.
And we also get the sense that Danvers has not been in Ennis, but only a few years. It seems like she's cut. A lot of these other people are local, more native to this town, but she's only been there a short period of time compared to others. She came after this other case had started.
Yeah. So I guess this is my guess, sticking with her family first. She came to investigate the Annie K murder and fell in love with this local guy
Yeah,
and stuck around or something. I don't know. Um,
yeah,
Navarro was working for the APF. The other figure we need to get in here is Hank is his name, right?
yeah. So
Hank
there's
Pryor's the
Hank
elder.
Pryor and Peter Pryor, both of whom work for APF. So they work for Danvers. This is a father and son relationship, but doesn't appear to have any other biological or romantic relationship to anyone else, just that they are of the same family and yet both work for Chief Danvers.
Yeah. And you get something of the feeling like Hank is a little disgruntled. And I don't know if here's my question, right? Like, so at this point, Danvers is in charge.
Right.
Who was in charge before she came?
Yeah. So this I think we have the same assumption here that perhaps he was in charge, got blamed for not solving this case. She was brought in to take over.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or something like that. Yeah. So those are those interpersonal relationships at play. Um, and I think we hit on the main ones. I mean, there's also some stuff in here that seems a little to the side, which I guess we'll go ahead and mention now, like Navarro's sister, right? Yeah, that scene where she freaked out. I think her name's Jules.
Yes. So Navarro's sister seems to have some sort of history with hallucinations or seeing something or experiencing something, and people are watching over her, but it's something that's been there in the past. There's something that has happened to their mother because she references how you're not like mom or
Yeah.
I'm not like mom. But yeah, there is sort of I guess, a more stable presence in Evangeline Navarro, but her sister is having some sort of issue with hallucinations or something that she's experiencing in that regard.
Yeah, that's just sort of there, but presumably it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And then also you've got with Pete, he's got a, I don't know if it's his wife or girlfriend and child.
Yes.
And and then there's also the brother of Annie Kay. We have a scene with him. All of that's presumably going somewhere, but I don't have a whole lot to say about it other than just kind of like note those things are there.
Yeah, so we should at least just touch on, okay, what do we feel like we know about the relationship between Danvers and Navarro? That they had differing views about the cold case, and Navarro can't let it go. Danvers says you need to grow up and move on. It's not getting solved. And it seems like that's what sort of created the rift between them.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this is what I imagine. They're investigating the case. They hit dead ends. They're investigating it for however long, before Danvers came to her view that this is not going to get solved, which he
Yeah,
says to Pete in this episode, and that Navarro would not accept that
yeah,
and kept pushing it. There is also in here that the victim, Annie, was an activist who
yes.
was bothering the muckety mucks in town,
Mm-hmm.
to an extent where the rich and powerful are potential suspects, even. And so maybe there is some level at which Navarro was running up against those same forces or threatening to, that Danvers shut down.
There does seem to be this undercurrent of there are people that have come, maybe migrated to the town that work in these factories that do this, whether it's drilling or mining or whatever it is, as their career. And then there are also the more native indigenous population that there seems to be there's a lot of like personal, even romantic relationships there, but maybe the two groups don't mix well in general, is that's the sense I get. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm by no means an expert in
Yeah.
what occurs in Alaska. This is there was a sign. So Ennis is not a real place,
Right.
but it seems to be Barrow, Alaska. There's a sign. There was this show. I think it was called something like the United Shades of America. Do you know what I'm talking about? W. Kwamo Bell.
Yes, I've heard of this. Yes.
I watched a little bit of that. There was an episode where he went to Barrow, Alaska, and there's like a shot in this episode that I feel like was in that episode of that show. Looking into this a little bit, apparently they were filming this mostly in Iceland.
Mhm.
But anyway, you're talking about like the farthest north you can go in the world and have a town,
Exactly.
basically.
Exactly.
Um, and so, of course, there are tensions between the outsiders coming in for whatever reason and the indigenous
Yeah.
population. Um, and that's certainly a play here. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's
And to be clear, I did just briefly research this. The Navarro character is written to be a combination of Dominican and Inupiaq. Sort of that's the native the native side of her background. So the Inupiaq are sort of I guess the native population that's in this group. That's the extensive research that I've done. Just don't want to discount that. Sort of those people from that area.
cool. Yeah, maybe we should research that a little bit more as we move forward. And
Hmm.
I don't know, see what kind of ties in there. Um, we you jump to something. You have the
Yeah.
research station. Um,
Yeah, so I mean, it is a good segue into the research station. The research station is sort of this melting pot of people from around the world, apparently, that have come there to do their experiments, apparently to help to study climate change, to study the effects of the environment on certain experiments they're conducting there at the lab. We don't have a really great extent of what all that is, only that there's, they sort of list what their different areas of expertise are, but there is no there's no separator of them whenever what this thing is that caused them to disappear. Every one of them is gone.
Yeah.
And so I don't get a lot of sense that there's a lot of interaction between the folks at NS and this research station, other than just making deliveries. Um, but yeah, I mean, certainly that's about to change. Dannenberg and her people have emerged on it after the disappearances.
Yeah. So what happens is weird. The one guy, I didn't take the time to learn all of these guys' names, by the way.
Me neither.
Maybe that'll be a mistake moving forward. We'll find out. Maybe there'll be a point where like, oh, this particular guy's name is worth knowing. But given that they were all missing, and I presumed that they would be dead by the end of the episode, I didn't put in that effort, so apologies. But the one guy kind of freaks out, and he says she's awake.
Right.
And there's a point later in the episode where Navarro is driving when she confronts the polar bear in the road. When we hear she's awake
Yes.
again. Not clear to me if Navarro hears it or what. Like is it diegetic or what? There it felt noteworthy that all of the scientists did seem to be men.
Yes, that is true. And certainly this has come up not just here, but in any analysis or review you'll see of this series, is that there are certainly men in this series, but this is in sort of the other side of the coin of season one. This is a very heavily focused on women's season. These men are gone. Like I said, we have their names, we have their backgrounds, but they're gone. There's some dysfunction between some of the other men we've seen on this show, but there is something about this she's away. Clearly, we don't know what that is. We don't know what it's in reference to. We don't know how it has impacted these people that have disappeared. But there is something, and like I said, it. Let's see. So the first time you said is amongst the men at the research station, then is with Jodie Foster's character Danvers later. So there's not sort of again this separation of who can hear and who can't. It's just a really open-ended mystery of what that means and what that represents.
Yeah, who is she? I mean, I guess part of what I'm trying to point out is a mundane answer doesn't seem to be available. We're immediately kind of hitting on a sort of mystical element or supernatural element.
Yeah.
And resonances with season one.
Yes.
Where I'm not sure we ever quite got a supernatural element in season one. Like there was a moment in season one where a lot of us thought, oh man, this is about to take a turn into cosmic horror, but then it kind of didn't,
Yeah, I went back and reviewed a lot of the plot points of season one to prepare for this, and seemed like there was a I don't know what the right word is, an earthbound explanation for everything that happened in the end. There were some very cultish, very mystical things that occurred, but it was all could be traced back to a group or a person or some experience that happened. This is, I mean, with what we see with the She's Awake, what we see with what these Moose experience, the Travis character, what he's doing in the episode, there's certainly something else, something extraterrestrial at play here.
It certainly seems like it. I mean, if we wanted to be reductive, or scientistic, as it were, like I don't know what was going on with the moose, or is it plural of moose or mooses? Moose. I think it's moose. Anyway,
Yeah.
It seems like they get freaked out and they run and jump off a cliff. Maybe there's
Another
like
thing explained. Yeah.
Maybe there's a naturalistic explanation for this kind of moose behavior. Possibly some shifting of electromagnetic fields or what have you. You've got the thing with Rose, which I do want to talk about. Seeing who I guess is her dead husband. Well, you could say she's just hallucinating.
Yeah, certainly could say that she's
Um,
hallucinating. There's even a reference, I think, by Navarro that she tells Rose, you know that Travis is dead, and she says, I know. Sort of like it's no surprise or it's not uncommon that this is happening.
yeah, but then he does his Tom York dance and he points her to the court. Did that remind you of Tom York
Yes,
dancing?
yes, it did.
Very good.
I laughed when I saw that in our notes. Yeah,
um, and he points her to the corpses, so we'd at least have to say there's something really coincidental going on. Um, but what happened to these scientists and what led them out into the cold? How did they die? Maybe they just died from the cold, I suppose.
and what or who or how did someone write on the board, "We are all dead"? If this was a something immediate happened to them, or is this more of a gradual something that they experience, a la the thing, and then someone has the ability or the wherewithal to write on that board before the last of them is taken, or it's just something unexplained right now.
Right. I mean, okay, so it could be something like, oh, we're infected by some parasite that we're familiar with, and
Yeah,
that guy's showing severe symptoms, and we aren't all yet,
yeah,
but we're probably going to, and we have to contain that and not like infect the Funyuns guy,
right.
and we're going to just go and kill ourselves and get out of here. And they leave that message behind on the whiteboard. It's
And
weird though that this is the
it,
mystery. Sorry, go
it
ahead.
is weird, and especially in that I think when we see and hear that she's awake for the first time, it's one of those men who has this sort of sudden moment of just as I say freaks out, says that the guy's behind him, making the sandwich on his TikTok or whatever, and it's just sort of a surprise. He doesn't seem like any of the others that we witness in that moment have been affected by anything or experienced anything. This one guy does. So then what happens? We just don't know yet.
Right. And whatever it was enough that he didn't eat his sandwich.
Exactly.
And the
Exactly.
tongue. Where did the tongue come from? We're going to find something more
Right.
out about the tongue. It's been sent for tests and everything. Denver says it's a native woman's tongue, noting the marks on it, which he thinks are from like, looking on thread or what have you. If so, where to come? How did it get there? If not, equally, where did it come from? How did it get there? I mean, like the idea that one of them bit off their tongue and spit it out, or cut off someone other researcher's tongue and left it there. It's probably not
Yeah,
those
but
things.
and the fact that both Danvers and Navarro, I think Danvers first, Navarro then learns that, the sort of general belief is that this is a female native tongue, then ties it back into the cold case of a native female who was missing
Who
a
was
tongue.
missing her
But
tongue?
that's where she's now head first back into this case that she just can't give up.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Other weird thing I wanted to mention about the research facility, the TV, which they struggled to turn off,
Yeah.
it appears to be stuck not only playing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but playing this particular scene over and over again.
Yeah, it's not just looping the film, which I guess would be reasonable to assume if you just turned on a DVD, but it's stuck on this parade scene in Chicago for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's a DVD, it could be looping that chapter selection. I guess that's a technological possibility.
It's been a long time since I put in a DVD, so I'm not sure what it does.
Maybe these guys are really weird and set it up that way on purpose. I
Yeah,
don't know. And they're like, we want to see Ferris Bueller lip
yeah.
syncing. Uh,
And Jodie Foster apparently not a Beatles fan. Figure out a way to shut it down. She says no, not a fan of their music, but yeah, I mean, it's just maybe I've been thinking and watching too much Fargo, but that's one of those things that I think now where I'm good. It's going to be in my mind, and I think after 6 episodes, I hope there's some sort of reason, explanation of why that is. I presume there'll be some sort of here's what happened at the research facility that caused this to take place, but
yeah,
I don't know that we should. I can guarantee that that's going to happen.
I don't know. But on the other hand, maybe this is the clue. I
Yeah.
don't. We don't know where this is going. Also, you mentioned, Danvers says she doesn't like the Beatles. It's a bit more than that, right? Like, I'm not a huge fan of the Beatles. I like some Beatles songs,
Yeah.
others not so much. This one, from Ferris Bueller, not a huge fan of the song. I would not put the song on to listen to personally. But I don't know if I would be at the level of I really need to make priority one getting this goddamn song off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where she's at with it.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll tie into something down the line in some way too.
Maybe she had a
Characterization
she had a bad experience with Ferris Bueller at some point. I mean,
with the Beatles or with that song.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
yes.
let's see what else we got here. I want to mention the opening quote.
Yeah.
That this seems of real importance to get in there for people who may not have noticed this or looked it up. The quote itself, of course, is striking. For we do not know what beast the night dreams when its hours grow too long for even God to be awake. Credited to Hildred Castaigne, who is a character in the Robert W. Chambers story in the volume The King in Yellow, where this was a reference point in season one.
Season one, the Yellow
Like the big
King.
bad was the Yellow King, right? So I don't know how far we go with this, or if this is almost more like an Easter egg. Um, but definitely wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty clear connection. I mean, go read or look at anything you want. There are a lot of comparisons being made to the season one, not just in its quality, but in certain themes or in the sort of mirror reflections of each other. There are so many things that where this is cold and dark and female driven, was hot and messy and led by two males and two other males that were interrogating them. Just a lot of reflection of each other in sort of different ways. And I thought this was a pretty interesting. Oh, you are connecting these two things already.
Yeah, yeah, and it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Again, having only watched this first episode, I don't know yet. It's entirely possible that whereas season one gave a vibe of getting into cosmic horror or a real supernatural element. Maybe part of the idea of season four is we're going to actually do that. We're going to actually dive into the darkness
Yes.
and you know, what hides behind the dark or whatever, like because this setup certainly feels like that. The mystery of what happened at the research station doesn't seem like a mystery of looking for a murderer who's going to be a human being.
This is exactly right. Which can then circle back to perhaps why they were never able to solve a case of 6 years ago. Is there anything that's the same? There doesn't seem to be a lot of similarities. They talked about this woman who died. She was beaten and kicked and had her tongue cut out. We don't see that. Of course, we don't see much of anything with these researchers. They're frozen in ice when we first glimpse them. But is there something unexplainable about that first case that can then tie into the second? And they've dropped this clue, not just the tongue, but this clue about the jacket that the girl was wearing was the same jacket that was being worn by one of the researchers. I think that's the connection they were trying to make. And
Well,
so
you
is
have
there
the
some
same
explanation?
style, at
Yeah,
least. It's at least the same style of parka that
yeah,
Danvers is going to look for. And yeah, I'm really, really, really curious as to how we're going to build connections between what's going on now and that cold case.
yeah,
Um, I'm not super interested in any more flashbacks to when Navarro was in Iraq or whatever.
yeah,
I don't really need any more of that. We're probably
yeah,
going to get some more of it, but I'm not a
yeah.
huge fan
I
of
think
that.
I'm with you. I'd like the story to play out and have this current timeline, maybe if it's going to explain both. One of the, I think, hallmarks of season one was this jump back and forth between, what is it, 1995 and 2012. They just keep going back and forth and back and forth.
Hmm.
I would find it perhaps more interesting if one story in this current timeline can explain both things simultaneously. That'd be an interesting piece or interesting way to tell the story.
It seems to be the setup,
Yeah.
I mean, unless they're going to start having actual scenes that occurred
Right.
6, 7 years ago in the
Yeah.
episodes that are to come, which I suppose is possible, but six
Yeah, they did
episodes.
sort of introduce that with Navarro standing over that body in the rain, finding it, noticing the different things that had happened to it. So, I mean, sort of the stage is set if they wanted to go that route, but I think it's more powerful to do it one the other way.
Right. I mean, the way that plays is a flashback,
Yeah,
right? As opposed to actually having multiple timelines in the
right.
plot of the show. So yeah, we'll see what they do with that. Definitely intrigued. Again, no one is dressed warmly enough, which is the biggest piece of evidence that something supernatural is going on because they can go out in sub-zero temperatures,
Yes.
with nothing covering their faces or anything, and no gloves, and
No, yeah.
apparently just be fine. And Rose seems like, I don't know if she was barefoot. I mean, it's
There's been a lot of
superhuman abilities there.
there's been a lot of stuff mentioned. You referenced that this was filmed in Iceland, that there were days where they were filming when it was below zero outside. I mean, this is not just put in post production to make it look cold. They were actually filming in these sub-zero temperatures, and they had to, people were getting sick and people were, unable to perform because it just was so cold. It's
And they weren't dressed appropriately. Like, how do
exactly,
the people dress who live there? Come
exactly,
on, you know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, we're in, I don't know. And it's Alaska. Again, you look up the average daily temperature in Barrow, Alaska, or whatever, is like -5 Celsius, And it's, come on, man. The
Yeah.
sun's not going to shine for a month. It's cold.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. No, I mean it's a very interesting, very creative setting for the show. I just, you know, the whole night country and just sort of this all happening under the umbrella of darkness. I think it's just going to be a sort of a both literal and figurative subplot that'll I think will play very well towards what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, me too. You want to say a little bit more about Jodie Foster before we're done, or
Yeah, I
you
just
just want
was
me to go into it?
looking. So I don't know if you've looked into this or not. So obviously, Jodie Foster we think of as just this fantastic film star, has several Academy Awards, has done so much. Do you know the last time she was on TV when she was not playing herself or doing a voice?
Oh, I didn't look this up. I'm going to throw a guess at you.
Okay,
I'm going to guess that she was
give me a year.
can I just guess the 1980s? I was going to guess she was like on Growing Pains or something.
So she was a voice narrator for something in 2014. She was the voice in The Simpsons. She was herself in a Statler and Waldorf episode in 2005. A couple of voice things in the 90s. Before that, she played T.K. Deering in a TV movie in 1975. That was the last time that she played a character other than herself on television.
And this was a TV movie.
Yeah, TV movie.
Yeah.
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 I mean, this is
So,
a long, long time.
yeah. And I mean, that's True Detective had that element going back to the first season too, which was like 10 years ago now.
Yep.
Like, you remember a couple years ago? It was 10.
Yeah,
Um, Things have meaningfully shifted though.
definitely.
I do
Definitely.
recall though, even 10 years ago, kind of being like, really, Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson are doing television,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
But in the intervening years, it's really gotten much more common, you know, for people who've made a name in film to be doing TV,
Yeah.
I definitely think it fits to have Jodie Foster here, and I'm looking forward to her continued cranky old
Yeah, there's
police
some,
chief act.
yeah, and she's apparently plays fantasy football, which is awesome.
Yeah, but she
Oh,
doesn't like it, so I
I
don't
don't
know.
like it. Yeah. No, there's some good stuff out there. As Lopez, I think, has done some interviews saying that she had an idea, and her idea kind of was based on something like the thing that you're talking about, which led her to go back to rewatching the movie Seven, which led her to go back to rewatching the movie Silence of the Lambs, which led her to think, if I do this, I've got to have Jodie Foster. And just sort of the nature of this. They just thought that she was piercing and powerful in that, and yeah, she was somehow able to convince her. And I think I mean, this is clearly after one episode. I think we're all in on her performance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I forgot to look up where I recognized Hank Pryor from.
Oh, yeah. Where is he
Where do we
from?
recognize him from? Let's look it up real
Um,
quick.
yeah, he was on something recently. Gosh,
Uh, oh, this True Detective is hard to look up on IMDb. I'm remembering now.
yes. So he was in Winter's Bone, The Sessions, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. That movie had a lot of Oscar buzz. And then a lot of TV, a lot of TV.
All right, well,
Yeah. Eastbound.
I feel like there's something in particular, and maybe I'll figure it out before next week or something. And
Yeah,
we'll think
Deadwood
about
and
it.
Eastbound and Down are his two biggest things over the past 15 years.
Deadwood.
There it is.
It's Deadwood. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely Deadwood. Um, all right, so this is fun. Looking forward
Yeah.
to the rest of the season here. The following 5 parts. Again, our plan is to be with you each week for True Detective as it airs. We've been on Fargo season 5. We're going to wrap that
Yeah.
up on this coming Tuesday. Is the finale of Fargo season 5, and then we'll be moving forward with True Detective Night Country, putting these out on Sunday night. At least that's the plan.
Yeah. And now you give me a lot of fodder things to think about as I go write my piece for Sunday night. So I'll have
Right. Look
something
out
up on the
for
site as well.
yeah. Read Ryan's weekly articles on the site. Also, thanks for listening. Check out TVObsessive.com. Read the stuff that we write, we care about. Um, Subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a good review, please, if you like what you listen to. You can check out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe on there. Also, if you prefer to use YouTube, and we'll be back on Tuesday talking about Fargo.
Yeah. Let's finish up Fargo and looking forward to keep going with True Detective.
Okay. See you then.
See you then.